It is the avenue where you will get to meet the writers who are behind the book and the pen. And I'm so excited to be a part of the Sunshine State Book Festival and be able to bring you interviews from many of the authors that will be there January 27th to 28th at Trinity United Methodist Church. And tonight I am thrilled to introduce you to Melody Johnson and Rebecca Johnston. You guys were almost relatives except one letter.
So close.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
We are headed into October 31st. So I said to Pat with the Writers Alliance of Gainesville, give me all your paranormals, and I want to get them in leading up to that. Do you all sell more books during this time? Are you pushing anything during this time?
I would say a little bit. I think people are a little bit more in the mood to have a spooky book. And I see a little uptick, especially in my vampire books and my anthologies that I have little ghost stories. So yeah, I feel like people are looking for that.
Rebecca, is this your first book?
It's my first published novel, yes.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Melody up there, I feel like this is the Brady Bunch.
A little bit.
So you said early on in your life you write about chickens. You wrote about chickens eating people.
I, yes, I was a little girl. James Howe is my favorite author. And, Bunnicula doesn't actually eat people, but it was inspiring.
And so, what do you write about now?
My novel is historical fiction. So
Based
there's
here
a
in
lot of
Florida.
horror. Historical fiction can be very scary as well.
Yeah. So, ladies, there are countless people who feel like someday I would like to write, but I don't know how to get started. What do you say to those people who are aspiring to write, but they don't have a clue how to get started?
I would recommend trying to find your tribe. So if you have stories in your head, maybe you're scribbling down parts of stories, or you're scribbling down like scenes with characters. I would really take a look and see what other authors are in your area. Do a quick Google search and see what writers groups are around you. I know that some of the writers groups that I've been a part of have really enriched my writing and have expanded my knowledge of the publishing industry way beyond what I would have done on my own.
I would totally agree with that too. If you think of someone like Hemingway, who, of course, I absolutely adore Hemingway. Would he have ever been Hemingway if he didn't have a Sherwood Anderson and an F. Scott Fitzgerald? Getting around other authors, like Melody said, really builds you up. I also like what you said about, sketching things down. Sometimes it's just that commitment to get started and keep going, and confidence. I teach freshman composition. I see a lot of people don't have the confidence to think that they can do it. So kind of stepping out there and thinking that maybe you can do this, even if it's just kind of bits and pieces and you're writing just a few pages every day. Piece it together and keep at it.
Yeah, that sounds really easy, ladies.
The furthest thing from it.
Yeah, I mean, just start writing and keep at it. Well, yeah, I had Susie Baxter on who teaches people about writing memoirs, and she said, you know, just start writing. And there are people who feel very paralyzed with the pen. What are some of the things that can move them from that paralysis of even thinking that I can do this? Where do I start? Remember, we're in a society now, we don't even write letters anymore. We don't even spell out words anymore. We send initials. And I'm of the age when you send me some initials, I send it right back to you with a question mark. Speak English.
I think it was Anne Lamott that wrote an article called Shitty Rough Drafts. And there's just a lot of truth in the idea of a shitty rough draft. We want perfection. We want to sit down and write something perfect. And that's what paralyzes us, is this thought that I need to write this great thing right now. Well, you're not going to write a great thing right now. Just get writing. Like Melody said, just start scribbling things down, start sketching, start the writing, and accept that it's not going to be good, because it won't be good. But if you keep at it and you go back and edit, it can be great. But you got to accept that shitty rough draft first.
Completely agree with that. And you can't edit nothing. So no matter how terrible it is, it's something and you can make it shine. I'd also recommend trying different methods of writing. So a lot of times I'll start off on my computer because it's the easiest thing in a Word document and I'll get going. And then like halfway through, that blinking cursor is going and I can't think of anything. So I might change locations. I'll try writing in a different room, or I'll break out my pen and paper and try writing on that. I'll go for a walk and try writing on my phone. Because somehow your brain, I think, this is my informal opinion, your brain feels like it's not real writing. It's not actually going in your rough draft. So it's not actually your book. And then afterward, I'll copy and paste it in and say, oh, it's not so bad. I'll just fix it up. And then all of a sudden I'm editing my terrible rough draft and it's turning into something not so terrible.
Exactly.
You in Melody, the book that you have, they're like paranormal romances.
Yes. I have a paranormal romance series, the Nightblood series. There's 4 books in that series, and they are vampires in New York City, kind of like Buffy meets Bones. So the main character is a journalist, and she's investigating a murder spree. And during her investigation, she discovers a whole world that she didn't know existed beneath the city.
That sounds so great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any reason that you picked? So how do you? Because when I'm reading and because as a journalist having to write um, news stories, but thinking about developing characters because as a journalist, well, when I was a journalist, we actually just talked about the facts. So um, thinking about writing novels, or even in your case, Rebecca, this historical, your characters are based on historical events,
Mm-hmm.
but are
Yes.
they real characters?
No. The names of several of the characters are inspired by men who went off to war and didn't come back. It's very important to me that we as a society stop and remember them more, and that we remember the families that they left behind, the Gold Star families. So I use names to honor them, but they're not real people in the
Right.
book.
So, right. So in that case, and then also with you, Melody, it is always so fascinating to me to see how you develop these characters. Like you're having to carry on these conversations in your head with all these people. How do you do that without needing to go get a script, prescription?
They're my friends or enemies. Um, so I, as a romance novelist, I always develop first my hero and my heroine in a pair. I love thinking of them almost as one person or two halves of the same whole. So that when I'm thinking of their weaknesses, their strengths, their personalities, I can make sure to give them personalities that are going to conflict and possibly things that they didn't even know they needed to heal that internal wound as they battle the external wound together. So when I'm developing characters, especially the main characters, I always do them as pairs. Side characters, a little more fun because they are a little more loosey goosey because they kind of come to me as I develop the story. And of course, the antagonist is another big one that I want to make sure as I'm developing my hero and heroine that whatever character traits or wounds or motivations, especially the villain's motivations, that they are in direct conflict with the hero and heroine, that possibly their wounds are very similar, and what makes one a villain and one a hero, or are their motivations completely separate? So developing, I do a lot of character development in the beginning, in the beginning of my process, so that as I write, I know all of those things about them and can have conversations with them.
So, Rebecca, you teach at Santa Fe. What kind of grade does she get?
I'm sure she would be an A student. And I have to say, I completely agree. Kurt Cobain said, "I found my friends. They're in my head," and that is what writing is like. I found them all. They were here all the time in my head. That's where we develop character.
Aw.
Right there are friends in our head. And since you write vampires, I think it's in one of the dedications of Stephanie Meyer's books that she thanks her family for letting her be with her imaginary friends all day.
Really?
Mm.
Well, they have to be imaginary friends. Um, but do you hate to kill your friend?
Oh, I did some crying when I wrote and when I edited. It was very sad, but they died. What can I do?
I know. I know. It's like eating your pet chicken. Ah. Melody, you don't feel bad for your friends when you have to kill them off?
It depends on the character. Sometimes a lot of my, especially my vampire series it's a dark drama for my vampire series. My sci-fi romances are also very dark. And I don't know if it's just cathartic. I enjoy giving people their comeuppance. So when it's time to get revenge, or it's time, to, and now I do say that with a measure of my villains. If they just weren't killing people, you almost might agree with what they're doing. But I enjoy the action. I love writing action scenes. I love, there is a little emotion or sadness sometimes, but a lot of times I'm just enjoying it.
I think it depends on who you're killing off, because
Exactly.
it is very sad. But if you're killing off the right person, it's cathartic, and you get to kill them off every time you edit that chapter.
That's right. Possibly in different ways every time.
Like, that wasn't good enough. Let me change that. That's funny. So, how are your family members? Do they look at you and go, what are you thinking about?
Don't mess with mom.
Once in a while.
What do you say? Don't piss them off.
Don't mess with mom.
Oh. So what were you saying, Melody?
I get that every once in a while, especially, I guess, I don't want to say persona, but like the way I act very professional at work, or the way, at home, I seem very sweet. And then you might read my books and think, is this the same person who I see every day? But, the writer self can be very different from the actual self.
Gotcha. So both of you, writers, you have your jobs, you have your families. How do you balance? How do you balance this? Rebecca, as I said before, you work at Santa Fe Community College, and Melody, you work at a hospital. So you have all of that before you. You have your family. You have to go to Publix. How do you balance? And then you write. Are you all one of those 4 a.m. writers?
I am. I used to be a night writer.
Night writer.
Yes, I used to be a night writer. Back in the day. That was before my husband. But once I got married, I had to reevaluate my writing schedule. So I'm also the type of person who doesn't like to think that they're missing out on something. So if it's like a really nice day outside, I get very distracted, wanting to be outside and going on a hike or something like that. So I usually get up around 4:30, get my writing in for the day. I feel like I've done it. I can set it aside, and then I can move on with work or family life.
Rebecca?
I like to be sleeping at 4:30, but I also don't like to write at night. I don't think maybe 20 years ago, but I like to not be working in the evenings. So I do like the morning. I like to get up and have my breakfast and some tea and then grab another cup of tea and sit down and write. And to me, and I'm sure Melody would echo this, I find the actual writing process to be very peaceful and calming. It's like you finally get to sit down and concentrate on all those distractions in your head, getting them out. So it is calming and peaceful and helps me then to kind of go back to work later.
Well, let me ask you ladies this. Is it your writing? Are you using paper? Or are you doing it on your electronics?
I prefer to write with paper and pen the first time. And that allows me the opportunity to go back with the electronic later and look at what I wrote and kind of decide what needs to be thrown out, what needs to be put in. It gives me that extra initial step of editing.
I prefer electronic. I do go back and forth if I'm in a rough spot and I feel like I've tried my computer, I've tried my cell phone, and I feel like I'm still not getting anywhere, then I'll go ahead and break out the pen and pencil or pen and paper and see if I can, if I can shake free of whatever it is that's blocking me. But for the most part, I do prefer digital because I can easily, if I'm writing on my phone, I can copy and paste things. So I prefer that.
So, Rebecca, when you're teaching freshmen at Santa
Mhm.
Fe, and what is this generation being told about? I mean, I guess you have to do what works for you. You know, writers like Maya Angelou. I think Maya Angelou never did anything except her yellow pad and writing with pen or pencil. Um, does it matter?
Well, for the final submission, generally it's going to be an electronic submission. It's important. I mean, I will offer an accommodation if a student has, a reason for an accommodation, but the final submission needs to be electronic. So I know my freshmen know how to submit electronic documents and it can go through a plagiarism similarity detector. But I find actually a lot of students prefer to do their beginning stages, the thesis and the rough draft on paper,
Well, they
at
do.
least the third, which is surprising to me, given the common age grouping for this sort of class. But yeah, a lot of them do like that, for all sorts of reasons. Not the majority, but a lot of them.
That's interesting. So, ladies, Melody, you have written 9.
Total including anthologies, yes. So my Nightblood series is 4 books. I've done 3 anthologies, and my sci-fi series is 2 books, and the second one is coming out in January.
And you've won awards.
I have, yeah. My sci-fi book number 1, Beyond the Next Star, won the Maggie Award of Excellence through Romance Writers of America.
So, since Rebecca and I are on our first book and we've not won any awards yet, can you tell us how to do it?
I had been submitting my published and unpublished. So there's lots of different writing awards that you can, or contests rather, that you can submit to in the hopes of, getting an award. I happen to be part of Romance Writers of America. They have a lot of different conferences, lots of different opportunities. And for this particular contest, I had been submitting to for several years. And that was the first book that ever finaled, and then I happened to win.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
actually, Pamela, I don't think it was in my biography, but I did win a Firebird, first place for historical and second for Southern literature. The Firebird Awards it's a great group to look into because most of these awards that you apply for, there's some kind of application fee to apply. The Firebird is run by a non-for-profit, so all of those fees go to help. So the one that I applied for to be considered went to help mothers in homeless shelters, and then it's all volunteer judges. So there's some really great ones out there to look at. I would definitely echo everything Melody said, to just put your book out there and see what happens.
Wow, and congratulations to
Thank
you.
Same to Melody as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, ladies, you all are going to be part of the Sunshine State Book Festival, which is part of the um, Writers Alliance of Gainesville. Book Festival is coming up in January. These kinds of book festivals and book signing events, how significant is that to the author and readers who come to meet you?
I absolutely love them. I feel like when I'm writing and developing my stories, I'm in my writer's cave. I mean, I do go on social media, especially when I'm about to have a book launch so that I can promote. But otherwise, getting that face-to-face time with people who have either already read my book or are really excited about my genre and want to read my book or dive into, I'm new to them. It's really exciting. I get a little thrill out of it. It's like all that hard work in my little tiny office, it's finally paying off.
Yeah. Rebecca?
Yeah, well, I'm a lot more new to this game than Melody, but I do really enjoy these sort of events. It's a great opportunity to go meet other authors like Melody, to get to network some with authors, and to just interact with the public who's interested in reading, and talk about my book and hear about other great books. It's a wonderful opportunity for the community.
When you walk in a bookstore and you see books that, like, I go to Ollie's sometimes, and I think one day my book may be in here at Ollie's for 25 cents. Do you ever think about stuff like that? No, you just write.
Yeah, I think it's good to write and not care if anybody ever reads it. If you can write and not care, then that story is coming out. Once it gets out there published, I feel a little bit more like, dang it, it'd be nice if someone picked this book up for more than 25 cents, but at least then it's getting read, right?
Yeah.
I feel the same way. It's hard to balance. They say not to write to market because as soon as you think vampires are really hot, you write your vampire book, and all of a sudden everyone's reading werewolves. So I try and stay true to just whatever I'm interested in, or whatever issues or topics or genres or tropes excite me at the time. But also it could be a little bit of a motivation. I know for my newest book, it seemed like it was like the story that would never end. And finally, I got to the end, but it was a lot of readers that had read book one that were like, well, when's book two coming out? And then it would give me the motivation to just climb that mountain and finally sit down and finish it.
So you say you felt like the book would never end. That's so interesting. Um, and so in the process of the work that you all have done, who are the editors, or what's you write and then you have to hand it over to somebody to do the proofing and the editing. Does that make you uncomfortable?
Not anymore. So for my personal writing process, so I'm a hybrid author, meaning that my Nightblood series was traditionally published with a publisher, and my sci-fi series is indie published through me. And so, but either way, no matter how my book is being published, my first draft still goes to a couple of reader friends who are also writers. I have 3 of those. And then I have a friend who's also an editor, so she takes a look at it. And then finally it goes through professional edits, whether that's my editor at the publishing house or whether that's the editor that I've hired to be my professional editor for my indie books. And also having a background in creative writing in college, my professors would tear me apart. So I've developed my thick skin, and my friends are really nice. So they will tell me the truth with a smile. So it's not quite as terrible as it used to be.
Well, Rebecca, you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Like, who puts the red marks on your paper?
Yeah, I can't say I enjoyed that part. My process is very similar to Melody. I had friends that I trusted would be kind, but be willing to tell me, this is not good right here. You need to fix this. For the editor, I found it to be a helpful but frustrating process. My book is written, it's written how people speak in my area. So there's some grammar errors that are intentional. So there were some little arguments, little headbutting over what's intentional and what's an error. And as an English professor, I'll openly admit that even as a professor, when I'm writing, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all need that editor to come through and point out those little errors that we didn't notice.
Well, I was in my book that I wrote, The Art of Forgiveness. I was talking about a time with my daddy when he was working and being called a Negro. Well, one group said I needed to take that out because that wasn't politically correct. Well, that's what was said during that time.
Mhm.
How do you balance that? Just say, give me my book, give me my manuscript, bye.
Yeah, yeah, and that's very difficult too with that topic because my book is set in the beginning of the 20th century, and there are white people and there are African Americans, so there's the need to portray some racial tension as it was. I wanted that in there because I had to read it in my own research, and I felt people needed to see how ugly things were. So when I get comments from the editor that suggests this should be worded differently, I'm going to listen on something like that. I don't want to be offending people because I've used the wrong word. So I'm going to bend on anything like that. But when it comes down to whether or not I have an apostrophe here, that's going to be, I might insist on my way.
Yeah, but an apostrophe as opposed to, I mean, how do you really create the setting?
Mhm.
If you're saying a phrase, if you're saying a word that didn't exist during that time.
Yeah, I ended up putting in some dashes. I used a word, I think, twice, where I was trying to express, is my book is set in this area, and so Rosewood does happen in the book. The book goes from the early 20th century right into like 1945-ish. So it happens, and ugly words are going to be said. I chose to use dashes so that you can figure out what that word was, but I didn't want to put in a word. I don't think it would be right for me to put in a word that's going to be hurtful and offensive. And yet, like you said, this is the word that was used. So to put in a different word would be softening how ugly things were.
Yeah, I think that's a little tough for me. Um, and you know, I might need to have some therapeutic talks after this. But if you, because as a journalist, wanting to be accurate
Hmm.
in what I'm writing, and so, but anyway, back to you all, back to our regularly scheduled program. As you feel responsible to your readers. I mean, even Melody, talking you have a vampire. Can you not talk about blood? You know what I'm saying? That
Hmm.
could be offensive to somebody, but that's what happens with vampires, right?
That's exactly right. So my touchstone for writing and editing is so I have my three beta readers, my friends who are authors, and my friend who's an editor. And there's plenty of times that I've written it, I feel like it's on the page, I feel like it's perfect, and three out of the four of them see something consistently, and I still don't see it, but they have seen it. And so I'll try to rework it in a way. I know that there's obviously something there because the majority have seen it. If one person has an opinion, or another person has an opinion about something, but the majority isn't seeing it, then I'm not going to worry about it because everyone brings um, their own experiences, their own history to a book when they read it, and you can't predict any of those things. And so, but if multiple people are telling you the same thing, then I feel like there's something there. Maybe it's not the fix that they're suggesting. Maybe I find a different fix for it, whatever it is. But I'll pay more attention to it.
Ladies, this has been such a delightful conversation, and I appreciate your being vulnerable to discuss your writing process and even the things that can be uncomfortable. Rebecca Johnston's book, "Not to Keep a Brother's Story," it is a story that um, you wanted to make sure that their stories were told. And did you have a family member that this was based kind of on, or why did you feel like you wanted to talk about the stories of World War One?
There's a couple different things there. My grandfather actually did serve in World War One. My grandfather, he was born in 1895, a little odd generational gap. I didn't know him. I studied World War One as part of both my master's and now working on my doctorate. And they're just World War One was a very horrific time for the men who served, and we forget their stories. In America specifically, Europeans don't forget, but we do. And I felt that that needed to be reminded. We needed to remember the veterans who marched on DC in the Bonus Army that were run over by Patton, who killed 2 veterans and some children that day. We need to remember that U.S. veterans died in the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 because the government refused to give them hurricane shelters. These are things we need to remember. But also, I wanted to remind of Gold Star families, these individuals who have lost loved ones to war, both in the past, in our past wars, and in the current wars, because this is an ongoing thing. We still lose men and women in war, and we need to remember their significance.
Do you think you will write more books like this?
Probably, yes, yes.
Wow. Interesting. Very nice. Very nice. Well, ladies, I really appreciate you all taking time to share your stories, share your writing with us, with the world, and you will be live and in person at the Sunshine State Book Festival, January 27th and 28th. It will be at Trinity United Methodist Church, and I feel very honored to have had an opportunity to sit down and speak with you all, and so look forward to meeting you all in person in January.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Can't wait to see you as well.
Yes, 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 yes. And Melody, your book again, your latest book.
Yes, my by the time we have the signing, my new book will be out. It's book 2 in my Love Beyond series titled Sight Beyond the Sun.
Sight
Sight
Beyond this,
Beyond the Sun.
and that one is about.
That is a sci-fi romance novel about a woman who gets abducted by aliens. She's a special forces explosive specialist, and she plots a ingenious plan to cozy up to the captain who abducted her, to commandeer his ship and save everyone and bring them back home.
Well, there's a cat
That was adorable.
that was about to commandeer Rebecca.
He's very demanding.
It's like, it's okay. That happens. That happens. Well, that's a very, 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 very interesting plot. The lady that I interviewed last night, who does paranormal writing, and she says she takes lessons so that whatever weapon her character is using, so that she can write to it better. No spaceship and no way to go back to be a part of war. Kudos to you, ladies, and your vivid imaginations. Must be fascinating reads. I look forward to reading them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody, I thank you all so much for joining us, for watching, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Please like and share and subscribe, and make sure, hey, is the Sunshine State Book Festival, is there a fee to get in for people who come? I don't remember.
No, it's free.
It's free. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Well, come on down. We'd love to see you. It's free. It's free. Get to touch the book and see the authors. We will be here tomorrow and throughout the week, introducing you to more great authors who will be a part of this Sunshine State Book Festival. I hope you will join us. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment. We'll see you next time.